My parents left me out of the will after I paid $60,000 to save their house, and my mother still asked for more. I used to believe that dedication would eventually be rewarded, until the day I opened that old folder of documents. That afternoon, I stopped by my parents' house in Salem, Oregon, like I did every weekend. My mother, Denise, wasn't good with technology, so I often helped her check accounts, organize tax documents, and digitize important paperwork. That two-story red brick house, where I had spent almost a decade supporting them financially and helping to renovate tile by tile, felt like a second home to me. "Can you take a look at this for me?" she said, handing me a disorganized stack of papers before returning to her orchids in the yard. I sat at the dining table, sifting through the pile, until my eyes landed on a thick cream-colored envelope boldly labeled, "Estate Plan and Will." I hesitated, not because I was curious, or at least that's what I told myself, but because I wanted to make sure everything was in order. I had always been the one who worried about these things. The one who kept the family from falling apart. But when I turned to the page outlining the distribution of assets, I felt a heavy pressure in my chest. Everything, and I mean everything, the house my parents owned, over $450,000 in savings, the new SUV, even my mother's wedding ring, it was all clearly stated to go to Samantha, my younger sister. And me? Not a word. Not a single mention, other than the vague sentence, "We love both our daughters." I clenched the paper, my fingers turning white. Every memory of working 2 jobs to help pay their mortgage, of driving through snowstorms to deliver my mother's medicine, of fixing plumbing, replacing shingles, each one felt erased by that cold, printed line. I heard my mother walk back into the house, her light footsteps behind me. "Hannah, did you find the statement?" I stood up, will in hand, and turned to her. My voice was calm, undeniably calm. "Mom. Is this real?" She froze, her eyes on the paper in my hand. "Oh, Hannah. What does this mean?" I cut her off, my throat tight, but every word sharp. "A lifetime of caring for you and Dad, and I'm discarded as if I never existed?" My father, Richard, entered from the living room at that moment, a cup of coffee in hand. He set it down with a sigh, as if about to comment on the weather. "You don't need to react like this, Hannah. You're doing fine. Samantha, she's still figuring herself out." I let out a humorless, dry laugh. "Figuring herself out? She's 30 years old. She changes jobs every 3 months, lives off roommates, and can't even pay her own phone bill. I'm the one who's been paying your mortgage for the past 3 years. I'm the one who fixed the roof last winter. I'm the one who kept this house standing, dollar for dollar." My mother stepped forward, placing a hand on mine as if that could soothe me. "Don't overthink this. I just wanted your sister to feel secure." I pulled my hand away, nodding slightly, my gaze cold as ice. "Secure? And what about me? The one who held this place together all these years?" They said nothing. I placed the will back on the table as if I were returning a declaration of war. "Thank you for showing me where I really stand." I walked to the door without looking back. No one called after me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel hurt. I just felt empty, a quiet, hollow emptiness that chilled me to the bone. I never went back to that house again. After discovering the will, 2 weeks passed in silence. No calls. No messages. As if I had never existed in their world. I told myself that if they had even a shred of conscience, they'd reach out. But instead of an apology or explanation, what I received was a message from my father. "Hannah, this month's mortgage is due. Can you transfer soon? The deadline is Friday." I froze, staring at the message in disbelief. A part of me almost laughed. No mention of what happened. No question if I was okay. Just a demand. As if I were their default ATM. I wrote back, each word like ice. "I think Samantha can handle it. That house is hers now, right?" Then I put down my phone and didn't wait for a reply. 10 minutes later, the screen lit up again. This time it was my mother. "Hannah, don't do this. We need to talk." I didn't respond. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore, just a kind of relentless clarity had taken the place of every fragile hope I once had. For years, I believed my sacrifices would be acknowledged. I was wrong. And I had no interest in playing the savior anymore. 3 days later, the next message came from Samantha. Aren't you overreacting? Mom and Dad didn't mean it that way. You've always been independent, and I'm just not. You know that. I wrote back slowly, every word cutting through my sister's fake mask. Then prove you deserve what you received. Start by paying the mortgage. No response. Another week passed in silence, until one Monday morning, while I was having coffee in my kitchen, my phone vibrated with a transfer request, exactly $2,900. From my mother. No message, just a cold, emotionless withdrawal request, just like the way they excluded me from everything. I declined without a second's hesitation. Minutes later, the phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring until the fourth tone, then declined the call. A message came through immediately. Hannah, I know you saw it. Why did you decline? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and replied. Because it's not my responsibility anymore. Ask Samantha. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control. I wasn't the one rushing to patch cracks I hadn't created. I wasn't sacrificing all my youth to mend the failures of others. 3 days later, Samantha messaged again. You're being so selfish. Didn't you always say family comes first? I reread that message several times. Family. The family she spoke of was the same one that treated me like a stranger, like a walking wallet. I replied with one sentence. Family is about fairness and respect, not using someone until they're no longer useful. After that, there were no more messages. Silence settled over everything. But this time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt like relief. A release from a burden I had carried for far too long. But deep down, I knew this silence was just the beginning, because they would come back when no one else could help, when the house was at risk of foreclosure, when Samantha, even with that entire inheritance, still wouldn't know how to pay a bill on time. And when that moment came, I would be ready, not to save them, but to show them that I was no longer the one who would sacrifice without even a thank you. The next message from Samantha came around midnight, while I was in the middle of a historical novel and sipping hot tea. The phone lit up, and I didn't even need to open it to guess the tone. You're being so dramatic. Everyone's already stressed. Why are you choosing now to be like this? It's just a few payments. You've always done it. A dry laugh escaped my lips, humorless. Just a few payments. Easy to say when you've never paid a utility bill in your life. I wrote back. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. And you'd better get used to it. Less than a minute later, she replied. You're seriously selfish. Don't be surprised if Mom and Dad never forgive you. I set the phone aside. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I wasn't haunted by what if they're upset, or obsessed with being the good daughter. I had crossed the line between being exploited and standing up for myself. The next day, I called the bank and asked to have my name removed from the joint account used for the mortgage. I also contacted the utility companies and canceled all the automatic payments I had been secretly managing for years. I deleted the bill reminders on my phone, a small ceremony marking the end of my role in their home. That night, I cleaned my little apartment, played my favorite playlist, and bought myself the chocolate cake I'd always loved but never bought, because the money always had to go toward more important things. I started sleeping peacefully, waking up without the jolt of a payment notification. I went to work without feeling like I was dragging 3 other adults on my back. I even enrolled in an online video editing course, something I had dreamed about for years but always put aside because I didn't have the time or couldn't afford to be selfish. And as my life began to breathe on its own again, the echoes of the past came back louder. At the beginning of the following week, my mother Denise called. I didn't answer. A message followed soon after. Hannah, we need to talk. Your sister doesn't know how to pay the internet bill. Can you help? I didn't respond. 2 days later, another. The landline was cut. She says she can't log in. I don't know what to do. I read the message, then opened the drawer and took out the old notebook where I had once written down all the passwords, billing schedules and customer service numbers. Whenever my parents didn't know what to do, they called me. Whenever Samantha forgot a payment, I took care of it. This time, I closed the notebook and put it back in the drawer. I wasn't their assistant. I wasn't the backbone of a system that erased me the second I stopped being useful. 3 days later, another message from Samantha landed in my inbox. Are you kidding me now? The power's about to be cut off. Are you really going to let this happen to our family? I replied with just one sentence. I'm not letting anything happen, I'm just letting everyone take responsibility for their own choices. Silence. I didn't hear anything for several days, until one morning I received a call from an unexpected number. Mrs. Lorraine, the neighbor who had lived next to my parents for the past 20 years. Your mother asked if I knew anyone selling houses. I don't think they're handling things well anymore. I thanked her, then hung up. I didn't feel smug. I didn't smile, but I didn't cry either. I just sat near the window, watching sunlight spill through the trees out front, and I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being crushed by duty or guilt. I had chosen to step out of the cycle, and I wasn't going back. The first message came on Monday morning from someone I hadn't expected. Mr. Walter, the neighbor who had lived next door to my parents for over 20 years. Hannah, are your parents okay? Denise asked what day it was. She thought she had the wrong date, but then she got a letter from the bank. It clearly says foreclosure notice. I stared at the screen. So it had happened faster than I expected. For weeks since I stopped all support. For weeks for the house I once held together to finally begin falling apart. An hour later, my mother called. I didn't answer. A message followed shortly after the tone. Hannah, please. We really need you now. It's serious. I read it, then set the phone aside as if it had nothing to do with me. But in truth, my chest still felt heavy. I had thought this moment might bring some twisted sense of satisfaction, but it didn't. Just a hollow, aching fatigue. Maybe because I had grown too used to cleaning up after others. I didn't respond. 2 days later, for the first time in weeks, Samantha showed up at my door. She was wearing a wrinkled hoodie, no makeup, clutching a messy stack of documents. Her eyes revealed panic. I just need 5 minutes, she said, breathless. Just 5 minutes, Hannah. I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway, not an ounce of sympathy in my eyes. You came to ask for money. Not money, she blurted out, her voice shaking. I just need your help talking to the bank. I don't understand the terms they're using. I'm overwhelmed. And what about the inheritance you received? I asked, my tone as casual as commenting on the weather. She looked down and mumbled. It's tied up in an investment portfolio. If I withdraw now, there's a penalty. I didn't think things would get this bad so quickly. I raised an eyebrow. Yet you signed everything without hesitation. I thought Mom and Dad had it all under control. They said everything was fine. I didn't think. Exactly, I cut her off. You didn't think, as always. Samantha fell silent. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. This is the lesson you need to learn. Everyone stumbles, but no one grows if someone is always there to catch them. Are you really going to let them lose the house? I'm not letting anything happen. They made their choice. Now they live with it. I turned away, leaving Samantha alone in the hallway of the building. 3 days later, I ran into Ben, an old classmate who had become a real estate agent, at a networking event at the local arts center. I was about to tell him about the photo project I'd been working on when he interrupted, eyes wide. Hey, your parents' house is on the market. I came across it. Someone on my team mentioned them. Looks like they're urgently trying to sell the old place. It needs work. High foreclosure risk. Are you okay? I gave a faint smile. I'm okay. I don't think they are. Ben seemed like he wanted to say more, but chose not to. That night, I opened my laptop and saw an email from a legal aid organization I had volunteered with in college. They were recruiting mentors for a new program, helping seniors manage housing debt. I smiled softly. Life had a strange way of coming back around. I sat quietly for a long moment. Before I enrolled, I did it, not for my parents, not for Samantha, but for me. For the woman who had finally learned to let go. I no longer needed to save the old house. But if I could use what I lived through to prevent someone else from falling into the same cycle, it would be worth it. On Saturday afternoon, I had just finished a photography workshop and returned to my small, quiet apartment, expecting nothing more than a cup of hot tea and a peaceful evening. But when I pulled into the parking lot, I saw a familiar silver minivan parked near the entrance. For years ago, I had co-signed for that van when my father, Richard, could no longer make the payments. I had transferred the title into his name last year, a final gesture of trust. Now it was there as a bitter reminder. I got out of my car and walked slowly. My parents were waiting near the building entrance. Samantha stood a little behind them, clutching her bag, eyes full of poorly disguised worry. I said nothing. I stopped a few steps away, arms crossed, waiting. My mother, Denise, spoke first, her voice trembling. "Hannah, I'm sorry we had to come here, but things got out of control." My father continued, his voice lower and more tired than I had ever heard it. "We made a mistake. I know that. But if the house is foreclosed, your mother won't be able to bear it." I looked directly at him, my gaze colder than it had ever been. "Then why, when writing the will, did you decide I wasn't worth including?" He lowered his eyes, fidgeting with the edge of his jacket. "At the time, we thought you'd be okay. You've always been strong." But Samantha, I interrupted. "Can fail, be forgiven, and inherit everything." I turned to face my sister. She pressed her lips together. Said nothing. No denial. No apology. "I gave my youth," I said, my voice calm but each word sharp. "Without conditions. And in return, I got contempt, and the assumption that Hannah will take care of it. I'm no longer in that role." My mother's tears fell. "We didn't know it would come to this. Can't you help? Just a little, just for a few months until things stabilize?" I shook my head, a breeze in my chest sweeping away years of obligation. "I'm not saying no because I can't help. I'm saying no because if I do, you'll all believe again that there's no need to change." Samantha finally spoke, her voice small and cracked. "I didn't realize it would get this complicated. I thought I just needed time. I didn't think you'd walk away so fast." I looked at her for the first time in weeks. "I didn't walk away fast," I said evenly. "I waited. I kept waiting. But our family chose to ignore all of that." "So, this is really the end," my mother whispered, tears still fresh on her cheeks. I looked at her, the woman who once rocked me to sleep, to whom I brought medication, whom I rushed to the ER, for whom I cooked after my father retired, and I saw, clearer than ever, the line between blood and real love. "I didn't end this," I said. "It ended the moment you decided who was worthy of being named, and who wasn't." No one said a word. The late autumn wind whistled through the bare trees, bringing a chill no jacket could warm. I stepped onto the porch, took out my keys, and opened the door. Before going inside, I turned one last time. "I hope you find your way, but I'm no longer this family's salvation." I looked at Samantha and spoke slowly. "If you really want to grow, this is your chance." I stepped off the carousel. "Now it's your turn." I went inside and closed the door behind me. The sound of the wind in the hallway muffled their footsteps as they left. I stood still in my living room, the afternoon light casting a long beam across the floor through the glass. No tears. No heartbreak. Just peaceful silence. I thought that after that final confrontation, they would stay silent. I had hoped the truth would make them reflect and quietly back away out of pride. But I overestimated the self-awareness of people who had always lived off others. 1 week later, I received a message from Olivia, a close colleague at the Arts Center. "Hannah, are you on Facebook? You should check your mother's page." She's posting some outrageous things. My hand trembled slightly as I typed Denise Baker into the search bar. Her timeline was full of emotional posts, photos of flowers, and inspirational quotes. But what made me freeze was a pinned post with a picture of our old house attached. It's heartbreaking when your own daughter turns her back on the family, abandoning sick and elderly parents, refusing to help in our time of need after everything we sacrificed for her. Over 80 shares. The comments were filled with sympathy, comfort, and judgment, all directed at the ungrateful daughter. I bit my lip, scrolled further, and saw another post, this one from my father, Richard. We thought Hannah was someone who loved her family, but when we needed her most, she walked away without a word. The house is about to be foreclosed, and she's acting like nothing's happening. Then came a post from Samantha, with an unmistakably mocking tone. Some people are only kind when they're above you, looking down. But when family asks them to come down and help, they choose silence. I guess that's the new version of being strong. I gripped my phone tighter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was tired. When guilt no longer worked on me, they turned to public shaming. But they forgot one thing, I wasn't silent anymore. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook, which I rarely used. I made a single post, no colored background, no fancy formatting, but every word was crystal clear. My family is sharing a one-sided story. So to be fair, here's the truth from my side. I attached a photo of the will, with Samantha listed as the sole beneficiary. I posted images of the mortgage payments, utility bills, and insurance, all in my name. Then I included the last text message I had received from my mother, asking for $2,900 to save the house. I ended with one sentence. My silence was not consent. I was simply waiting for the right moment to tell the truth. That moment is now. Within 10 minutes, the first comment appeared. Hannah, did you really do all this? I can't believe it, an old friend wrote. You're one of the kindest people I know. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. Then, one by one, people began sharing the post. Some who knew my parents chimed in, many expressing surprise. I always thought Samantha lived a pretty reckless life. Now it makes sense. No one should be taken advantage of like this, especially not by their own family. My post spread quickly, not because it was sensational, but because it was real. It was honest, and it didn't hide. 2 days later, my mother deleted all her posts. My father deactivated his account. Samantha changed her profile picture to a black and white flower, the vague and dramatic move she always made when things slipped out of her control. I didn't reply. I didn't post anything else. I just sat in my apartment, listening to the rain tapping gently against the window. And for the first time, I felt justice on my side. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need them to bow their heads. I just needed them to stop. And it seemed they had finally understood that I was no longer someone they could manipulate. One post, enough to end the years I had been forced into silence. And now, I was writing the next chapter, not on social media, but in real life. Since that day I posted, I haven't heard a word from my mother, father, or Samantha. Everything has been as quiet as a lake forgotten after a storm. But not the silence of waiting, this was the silence of acceptance. They had lost the one person who always came back after they destroyed everything. I was the opposite. I had started living. Every Monday morning, I went to the arts center to teach my first photography class to high school students. The way their eyes lit up when they held a camera for the first time, the way they saw the world through a lens, it reminded me that not everyone sees the same thing. And sometimes, you have to choose your own angle. At night, I took a part-time video editing course, a skill I had always dreamed of learning but had postponed because my family needed me. Now no one needed me. And for the first time in my life, that felt liberating. I began taking nighttime walks, unhurried, carefree. I baked on the weekends. Posted photos on Instagram without worrying about being called fake. I made new friends in class, people who didn't know me as the one who held the family together. And because of that, I was finally able to simply be me. As I learned to breathe on the other side of the city, the house at number 218 Elm Street began appearing on real estate listings. A friend of mine, Marcus, now a real estate agent, sent me a message. "Hannah, your parents' house is up for sale. They're asking for $390,000. But no offers. Looks like they couldn't fix the roof or the faulty wiring." I wasn't surprised. No one was there to fix the fuse box at midnight. No one to replace the water heater or call the repair guy on time. Not me anymore. That house had survived because of me. And now, it reflected the truth, neglected, deteriorating, and without anyone left to keep it standing. I heard one more update from Lorraine, the elderly neighbor. She called just to check in on how I was doing, but before hanging up, she mentioned casually, "Oh, and it looks like Samantha moved back in with your parents. I see her doing the shopping often. She doesn't look very happy." I looked up from my laptop and took a sip of my still warm coffee. In the past, hearing something like that would have made my chest tighten with worry. But now, I just shrugged. Maybe what Samantha needed most was to experience the instability she used to so easily dismiss. I wasn't glad they were struggling, I just didn't want to carry the weight of choices that weren't mine anymore. For the first time in 10 years, my savings account was steadily growing. I booked a fall trip to Seattle, to photograph the changing leaves. I put down a deposit for a new semi-professional camera, something I used to consider an unnecessary luxury. I was learning to care for myself the way I once cared for an entire family. I also began writing again, not defensive posts, but a blog about walking away from toxic family dynamics. Some entries were widely shared. Many people messaged me, thanking me for saying what they had never had the words to express. And on one rainy afternoon, while I was editing photos in my favorite cafe, my phone buzzed with a notification from a real estate site. Price reduced by $30,000 on 218 Elm Street. Seller seeking urgent sale. I looked at the photo of the house. Dark shingles rotting near the edges. Window frames flaking away. It used to symbolize duty, pressure, and expectation. Now it was just a house, waiting to be saved. And I was no longer the savior. I tapped hide notification, closed my phone, and smiled. A soft smile, lighter than air, but deeper than any sigh I had swallowed over the years. I didn't belong to that place anymore. On a late autumn afternoon, I was walking around Liberty Lake with my new camera. The golden light of dusk cut through the bare branches, casting soft shadows on the water. I paused, lifted my camera, and captured the perfect frame, a small child running in the distance, his mother behind him, laughing and calling his name. In that moment, I realized something. Some things aren't meant to be held on to. Because they were never really yours to begin with. I used to believe family was something you could never lose. That blood was an unbreakable bond. But now I know what truly makes a family isn't DNA. It's respect and gratitude. I had given everything, hoping to be seen. And in return, I became the name left out of a will. The one deemed dramatic for refusing to carry others' burdens any longer. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. I had simply let it go. They still lived there, in that old house, now listed for the third time. People said that whenever someone came to view it, Samantha tried to act like a responsible homeowner. But when they asked about maintenance records or repair bills, she would just smile awkwardly. Because all those years, no one ever taught her what to do. I never went back. Not once. My mother once sent me a handwritten letter, sealed in a familiar blue envelope, in handwriting I knew by heart. She wrote about sleepless nights, not knowing where to begin again. That your father isn't as strong as he used to be. At the end, she wrote, "I don't know how much time we have to fix things. But if you're willing, I'm still here." I folded the letter. I didn't tear it up. I didn't respond. I placed it in the drawer beneath my desk, next to undeveloped photos and unfinished drafts, things that needed time to be understood and accepted. I didn't hate them. I just no longer had the strength to keep sacrificing without being heard. I kept working. Teaching. Creating. Capturing. I even hosted a small photo exhibition at a friend's cafe, displaying images that traced my journey toward healing. Mornings in the park. Late night sorrow in dimly lit bedrooms. Golden light falling across quiet streets. The delicate hands of an elderly woman holding a warm mug. A single fallen flower on cracked pavement. A middle-aged woman approached me afterward. She took my hand and said, "I don't know why, but every one of your photos feels like it's speaking for someone who's been silent for a long time." I smiled without saying a word, because she was right. I had spent my life in silence, for peace. For the role of the good daughter. For the hope that giving enough would earn me the love I longed for. But now I had chosen a different kind of peace. Not the kind that comes from others' approval. But the kind that comes from finally choosing myself. I learned to love myself unconditionally. I learned to say no without guilt. I learned to let others face the consequences of their own choices. And most importantly, I learned not to look back. They're still my family, on paper, in memory. But they're no longer at the center of every decision I make. I don't know what the future holds. Whether there will be reconciliation. Or if things will remain as they are. But that doesn't matter anymore. Because in the end, I finally understand. Family isn't just the people who share your last name. Family is the people who value your presence. The ones who don't treat your kindness as a duty. The ones who make you feel seen and chosen. And if none of them can do that, it's okay. Because I have a family, me. And I don't need to look anywhere else. My story isn't a tragedy. It's an awakening. I once believed that love and sacrifice would always be rewarded. That family was unbreakable. But the truth is, no one deserves to be taken for granted, not even by their own blood. I learned to set boundaries. To walk away when necessary. And to choose myself without regret. Now, I live with lightness, freedom, and peace. Not because they changed. But because I did. What do you think of Hannah's decision? Was it too harsh, or was it the only way to truly protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more honest stories about real family life.